This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show, where we celebrate the role players and the underdogs in sports. And our Moonlighter for today is not very Santa Claus-like. Now, he's a good man, he's a jolly man, he's a happy man, one that you'd want to see. But he would be Santa Claus if Santa Claus lost maybe 100 pounds. Our Moonlighter for today is Ryan Harklau. Ryan Harklau is about 6'4", 6'5", a giant of a man. He's got broad shoulders. He's got a jolly smile, but he's still in good shape. And it would be like if Santa, hit the weight room for about 2 years and came out and you're like, gosh, dang, Santa, you look pretty good in that red suit. That's what Ryan Harklau would look like. He's probably, I don't know how much he weighs today, maybe 220 pounds. The guy still looks good. Back in his playing days when he played at Iowa State in football, he played on the defensive line from 1996 to 2000 for Iowa State. He weighed in at like 290 pounds at that time. Now you see him today and you're like, man, how did that guy ever weigh 290 pounds? And it's amazing how linemen do that sometimes. After their playing days are over, all of a sudden you realize no, there was a reason why these guys ran the 100-meter dash and, could dunk a basketball in high school, is because they're really, really great athletes. But they needed to put on a certain amount of weight to play offensive or defensive line in college or the pros. So Ryan Harklau came out of Humboldt High School, where he was a great basketball player. He was a great four-sport athlete. He ran track. He was on a state championship track and field team. He goes to Iowa State to play for Dan McCarney at the time of the Iowa State program when, it was the dark days, post-Walden era, where, they were winning 1 to 2 games per year. And by the end of Ryan Harklaw's run at Iowa State under McCarney, they won their very first bowl game. And I know bowl games don't mean much of anything for anyone anymore, but back in 2000, Iowa State winning the Insight.com Bowl was a huge thing for that program and a big thing for Dan McCarney and the Iowa State Cyclones at that time. And Ryan Harklau was at Iowa State during that run where McCarney was really building something with Iowa State football. And so today, Ryan Harklau, he's had a very successful post-football career. He's in the insurance world, just like I am. And after Iowa State, he played for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we get into that a little bit. And then he has transitioned into a very successful career in the financial services and insurance world today. So the other thing that he does is he, over the last couple of years, has taken over as the sideline reporter for Cyclone Radio Network. So he's the guy on the sidelines when John Walters and Eric Heff say, hey, it's starting to rain a little bit outside, let's go down to the field for Ryan. Ryan, is it raining down there? And then, of course, Ryan says, yeah, hey, guys, it is raining. And down here on the sidelines, guys are trying to figure out if they've got the right cleats on or if they've got the right gloves on. But it is raining down here. Back up to you guys. And I always think, man, being a sideline reporter would be a great job, especially a sideline radio reporter, because there's no visual element to it. So you just say, yep, it's windy down here, guys. Back up to you. What a job. What a great job that is. So it was great to hear Ryan's perspective, not only about his time when McCarney was building back the Iowa State football program, but also his insight in the Iowa State football program today. And of course, his time with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think you guys are really going to like this episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. Ryan Harklau is great. And, it's Christmas week here, so this week, while you're on the road, drive safe back home, wherever you're going for Christmas. Tune into the Moonlight Graham Show, but be sure to drive safe, celebrate Christmas, and be close to the ones you love. Have a great week, and have a Merry Christmas, Moonlighters.
Moonlighters, are you or someone you know moving down to Kansas City? Well, if you are, the one realtor that we trust and yet you need to be calling is the great Brian Samvig. As you well know, Brian Samvig is our producer here on the podcast, and there is not a better residential real estate advisor down in the Kansas City marketplace than Brian Samvig. Call Brian Samvig, shoot him a text. Hey, DM us on social media. We'll get you connected with Brian if you can't find him on all the socials, but he is there and he is active, and he is your Kansas City realtor, so give him a call. All right, Ryan Harklau joining the Moonlight Graham Show. Ryan, where do you rank all-time Humboldt, Iowa athletes?
Where I rank in the
amongst
them?
Like, how would you rank yourself?
That's a good question.
Like, are you probably top 10, right?
I don't know. That's a good question because it's one that pops off for me is like a Jeff Panic, a guy that played above me, and I played with his brother John Panic, and who is a good athlete as well. And then, you have guys. There's been a lot of good athletes.
Like,
out
is
of
Frank
Humboldt.
Gotch number one?
He's got a statue. Let's put him there.
Yeah.
I think he is the guy. Especially in the wrestling world, and
He'd at least be on the Mount Rushmore.
he is. And then Kevin Dresser and what he's done as a wrestler, and then Tony Ursula and what he's done as a wrestler and coach. So it's an interesting community. It's created a lot of really good athletes out of there. Bruce Reimers played in a Super Bowl.
I was going to put Reimers on there.
Yeah. So and there's guys that never. They may be good at a sport. Tyler Nielsen, all around amazing athlete, that came out of there as well. So it's a weird town that it's that small that it's produced that much talent in one small community.
Yeah, because guys like Dallas Clark and Greg Lemke, they do not count.
We'll take them.
No, they don't. No, I'm saying they don't count. I'm making the rules here. They do not count. Yeah, I remember watching Tyler Nielsen. So Tyler Nielsen was 3 years younger than me. I played against him in high school, but I was 3 years older. But watching that guy, he ended up being a great linebacker at the University of Iowa, watching him run the 400 in high school was a treat because this guy was like 6'4", 200 pounds, running like a 48, second 400. It was pretty incredible. What do you think was the best era of Humboldt athletics? Because they're still good to this day.
They are still good. They're getting better, which is good. The first state championship in football came with the Tyler Nielsen era, right? And I think Cody Huntermark was a big part of that team. And there's a lot of good athletes that were there then. The 80s were big time, with wrestling and football. The 90s were good. We were good in basketball. We lost, my sophomore and junior year combined, we lost 2 games total, And so that was a basketball era. I don't know. It's been the cool thing about the town is, and there's some small communities. It's 4-sport athletes, and I will support a 4-sport athlete all day long because I think that the reason our town and our community has produced so many great athletes is because they do play 4 sports. They're not capped by the time they get to college, and I think by playing, soccer, that makes you a better football player, and I think by playing football, that makes you a better soccer player.
Let's not say soccer. Kids should run track instead of play soccer. I'm just going to say that right now.
Yeah, well, Tavian Banks, man, he's a guy who tried to tackle at Iowa. He's a good soccer player.
He's the exception, not the rule.
I agree, though. I'm a track guy. Won a state championship in track.
Really?
Yep. So, I was on the state championship medley team. I ran the open 200 of that, but the 800 and the 4 and the 800 were the big part of it. So Chris Taylor, Carson Taylor obviously wrestles for Grandview now, big time wrestler out of Fort Dodge. But you look at that, like the track does lead obviously to good basketball, leads to good football, good leads all around, baseball obviously.
Did you play baseball then too?
I did until my freshman year. Played through my freshman year. It's either home run or strikeout. Like, I didn't know I needed contacts or my vision wasn't real bad until my sophomore year. So I really wasn't seeing anything come in on it. So honestly, it's for me, it's not my sport. It's hard to like sit, and it's too slow for me, and I get a little bored and my attention span is not long enough for baseball.
Well, it's funny. You're talking 4-sport athletes, and then you quit baseball. So, you were only a 3-sport athlete then.
I was, but I played a lot of AAU ball, played for the Martin brothers in high school, traveled. I had an opportunity to play out in L.A., figured out that being good in Iowa is not being good nationally in basketball, but it was a good experience. And that's where I focused a lot of my time on football and basketball in my summers, and that's when I walked away from baseball.
So you're playing Martin brothers early to mid-90s. You playing out in a tournament now, L.A. Was there any like big-time names that you ran into, you had to guard, that showed you hey, football might be the route for you, pal?
So, yes, the first game that I play out there, and we had a stacked team, what I thought was a stacked team. It's who's who in high school basketball at the time. And
who's on that team for you?
Well, Eddie Berlin's one of them, right? And Wessels out of Prairie is on that team, which he played at Arizona. Like, we have guys that have played in big-time basketball at that time. And Casey Essling, Nate Green, a kid that played at Indiana State. Like, we had guys that went on and played and were big-time players. And they win the opening tip. and I'm standing between the free throw line and the basket, and the next thing I know, someone's over the top, like literally over the top of me, and dunks it, and I was like, oof, I'm not in the North Central Conference anymore. The rules changed. I wasn't used to that at that time.
How many dunks did you have in high school?
That's a good, probably 10, 15, somewhere in there. Yeah, in the game, obviously. Yeah, 10 to 15. My first one was my sophomore year. It was the first one. Then once you do it, you're comfortable, and then you start going after it.
Did you ever dunk in the St. Ed's gym?
I did not, actually. I didn't get one in St. Ed's. No, not in the game at all, neither place. Ryan Wade got one on us, unfortunately. But I did not get one.
Yeah, because that's always the thing in the North Central Conference. Like dunking it was a big thing. There weren't a lot of high flyers in that league, but it's always been a good basketball league. But there was just, I could probably name every St. Edmund Gale that's ever dunked.
Oh yeah,
Humboldt, there's probably been, 50 guys that have dunked, and you probably can get pretty close through the years on who dunks, who hasn't.
Yeah, it's a pretty it's a shooting league.
Right.
If you're a shooter, you can play in the North Central Conference.
Yeah. So I want to go real quick to Iowa State football. So you come back basically into the Iowa State football family this year, taking Ben Bruns' job as the sideline reporter. What was it like kind of being away from, and I'm not sure how close you were in the game, but all of a sudden you're now on the sidelines every Saturday, kind of in the mix with college football for the first time in 20 years for you? Like, what was that experience like being back out there?
That's a great question. It's the greatest part of what I get to do is I get to steal from Iowa State football on how they handle things, whether it's, how you carry yourself and how you run a culture of an organization. Now I take that into my business world, and, how do you handle, people not maybe getting along, or people not jiving, or things not going the way you want it to go, and how do you communicate with that? How do you grab your leaders? And honestly, Coach Campbell is probably the best leader that I've ever been around when you come around to like handling a culture and handling his players and handling an organization and how he runs it. And for me, being around it again, it scratches the itch of being around football. But more importantly, for me, it's about the leadership things I've picked up from him and picked up from the organization. That just it's amazing what you're able to do with kids from 18 to 22 years old. That some come from homelessness, and Anthony Johnson obviously was homeless at one point in his life, to some kid that was going to private school and his parents are multimillionaires, and you're going into the same locker room, and at that point it doesn't matter, but how do you lead those kids? And for me, that was the greatest thing that I've been reminded of coming back into that room, is when you go into an organization or into a locker room, nothing else matters. I don't care which house you slept in or how much money you had. All that is out the window, and that has been one of the most refreshing things to see when you walk into Iowa State's locker room.
You played for a good leader in Dan McCarney, so I'm interested to hear you compare and contrast the culture that McCarney was able to develop, and you kind of went through the whole swing of it there, from the dark days to Insight.com Bowl in 2000, which if you're an Iowa State Cyclone football fan, you remember that game because it was a big moment in Cyclone football. And Campbell, he's kind of raised the bar. You played for McCarney. You've been up close with Campbell. How are they similar? How are they different?
So they're very similar. There's more similarities than not. My son's name is Mac, named after Coach McCarney. So obviously I love him, and I still talk to him these days. And when he hangs up the phone, he'll tell me he loves me every time. It's not there's a and he'll tell all the players that played for him that way, that he had the respect for. So back to the comment we just talked about on like what is refreshing in that locker room, and Coach Mac figured out is there wasn't racism in our locker room, but there was a race divide. Where it was, and coming from Humboldt, it's not like we're a diverse community. And the first experience you have around it was one that was, this is not, you knew it wasn't right or healthy, but it was kind of, it was segregated inside the locker room. And I think what Coach Mack was able to do was able to combine a team from different backgrounds, different paths. And then by the end of my career, it wasn't the same. I'm not saying it was perfect, but what I'm telling you is, like, one of my good friends, when I get done, is Reggie Hayward, James Reed, all the defensive line room. There's no line. Like, where you go to lunch, you go together. When you go out at night on a Saturday night, you go out together. And that didn't exist. And I think that's what Coach Mack had the ability to do, is take guys from so many backgrounds and get them to gel together and love each other, respect each other, and want to work and be around each other. And then that's the commonality he has with Campbell. That is the refreshing part of that locker room. There is no, they don't see color in that locker room. They don't see homelessness in that locker room. They don't see backgrounds and money. It's about a team, and that's the most common thing between Coach Mack and Coach Campbell that I've ever seen, is that when they walk in that locker room, it's not about your past. It's about being in that spot there.
Take the facilities out of it, because anybody that grew up an Iowa State fan and you went to games at Jack Trice Stadium in the 90s I remember Troy Davis as a sophomore running on that turf, before they put actual grass back in the stadium, and to where they are today. It's just remarkable. You can hardly believe it's the same place. So take that out of the equation, though, because that's obvious. What was the I can't believe this is Iowa State football moment for you, kind of coming back into the radio this year, outside of the facilities, whatever it might have been?
So last year was the first year there, and what woke me up is, in that locker room is Breece Hall, Charlie Kohler, Chase Allen, Brock Purdy, who's the biggest name in football, obviously right now after what he did last week against Tom Brady, Will McDonald, Anthony Johnson, TJ Tampa, who's going to be a first, second round draft pick. The biggest difference now is the talent level inside that Iowa State locker room. The record was not what they wanted this year. It's not what I wanted, not what any fan wanted. But the elite level of athlete in there right now compared to when I was there is not the same. I've told Coach Campbell this. I don't know if I play, and I was a free agent and went to the NFL. And now you're in that locker room like, man, how do I crack that D-line? Yeah, and I don't know. I think I get some playing time, but it's a different level of athlete right now in that locker room that is the biggest difference between then and now. It's deep, and it's different levels of athletes.
So you saw the rest of the Big 12 this year. What's the talent gap between an Iowa State and a Texas when you see it up close?
There is a noticeable difference. These athletes at Texas look different. They're taller. They're rangier. Their defensive backs look like linebackers. Their linebackers look like defensive linemen. Their defensive linemen look like freaks. It's like everything moves up a line in the defense. But the difference is they don't want to go harder longer. And I think that's the thing that where Iowa State can has an advantage on people is if you want to go harder longer, you can hang with anyone you want to. These guys want to make it big. If you think about some of the big talented schools, you see them go run, bomb. They're trying to beat you with big plays. They don't want to play you out the whole game. What Coach Campbell's done a really good job of is he has put a defense in place that will keep you in the game and make them play the whole game. They make every team play the whole game. And if you look at this season, we outgained our opponents in the Big 12 by 1,000 yards. And so the strategy was there, and it's been there. The unfortunate part was we had too many mistakes, and we lost in the margin to win. And that's a different conversation. But his plan of what he wants to do and make teams play the whole game is paying dividends for him right now. It will set him up for success in the future against those teams that are probably going to be more talented.
You think he's sticking around?
I think so. I think he's proven that, and I will tell every Iowa State fan this that if he doesn't, that's good news too. It's worse to say, man, do we want him to stick around, or does he? There's an off season where schools are going, man, do we want our coach to stick around? Then there's off seasons where Iowa State's been, man, do you think he's going to stay because you want him to?
Right.
I'll stay on the side of being nervous every year that he's going to leave, because that means we're having success. And the program's going to be in a better place. And no matter what he does, if he leaves next year or if he leaves in 33 years, whenever and whatever that comes, they should he should be recognized someday like Coach Mack, because he's going to take us through a time when conference realignment matters. Iowa State had a name for itself and a brand for itself when the Big 10, Big 12, everyone's realigning. This is probably one of the most pivotal fork-in-the-road moments in college sports for Iowa State, and we're extremely lucky to have him here to represent us and build the brand.
I'm a big Campbell fan. I've just been very impressed by how clear his vision is of how to build a program. And he's a man of faith. He's a great leader. He's all that stuff. I've just been really impressed with him. But I have one bone to pick with Matt Campbell. And it's a bone to pick with you too, because you are currently wearing a black Iowa State sweatshirt. And I'm anti-black uniform, Ryan. And also, I don't know why he always wears black on the sideline. Like every game this year, no matter what Iowa State was wearing, he was wearing black. And I'm just thinking, like, if somebody was paying me $3.5 million, I'd wear the school colors, right? And I can't get off it. Like I get it. I'm a crotchety 36-year-old dude right now. That's like, I get it that there's a different generation here that matters more of what they think than what I think. I'm not even an Iowa State alumni, so nobody cares about my opinion. But I just don't get how we can have like a college game day and we go out there and we wear black, and how we have a coaching staff who refuses to wear the school colors. And so, like I said, love Matt Campbell, think he's the best Iowa State football coach ever. I'm a Cyclone fan. Every week it drives me nuts.
So that makes sense, and I get it. Inside the state borders, it makes sense, right? It's you want them to wear the colors. I want them to wear the colors. The first time they ran out in black, I was like, that's disgusting. I really thought that. I was like, that is ugly. I still don't think it's amazing, but at the same time, what they are building is a brand around the nation. And when a kid is sitting in Florida that doesn't know who Iowa State is, they don't even know what their colors are, and they see that black and white, and it pops on TV when they wear the white. I like the all white with the black logos. That pops, and it does look different. It's like it's the sexiness of football and the uniforms. It's the environment of the game now, and he's building a brand outside the walls of Iowa.
I don't know. I just kind of disagree with that, because I really think that if you just change the logo on that uniform, it could be 70 different Division I football teams that all also have all black and all white uniforms. And it's just, there's nothing unique about it. There's no branding about it. And ultimately, if you're making decisions based on what some 17-year-old kid thinks, then you're thinking in the short term and not the long term. And I think that's actually runs contradictory to what Campbell has said about building a program. So
yeah.
That's my take on it.
No, I get it. I won't disagree. I didn't love seeing it the first time. Now, every senior class, if you've noticed, it votes on what they're going to wear on their senior day in the stadium. It's the black uniform, so it's attractive to them. It means that it's kind of a light switch thing for them. And
what happens when it's a different trend? Like, what happens 3 years from now when it's, Oregon wore the pink uniforms. What happens when it's blue is the hot color? Somebody comes out with it. Then are we going to wear them blue? Like, what's at this point, what's going to restrict us from doing the next trend?
If the next Breece Hall's coming to town, wants to wear pink, and we're going to win football games, let's wear pink. You know what I mean? Like, if they want, what do you want to wear? Like I think the traditional thought of college football is over. You know, and I think that it's dying, and people don't want to give up on it, but it's dead. I mean, conferences don't mean anything. The Big Ten's not the Big Ten. The Big 12's not the Big 12. The Pac-10's not the Pac-10 anymore, and the SEC sure isn't the SEC anymore. So the traditions that we believe that everyone wants to believe in are gone.
You're totally right there, but Alabama's still wearing numbers on their helmets. Penn State's still. The winners didn't change. It's the people in the middle that are trying to grasp for straws to still find some identity as the landscape is shifting around them, and they feel like they got to grasp for straws to, jump onto whatever ship they feel like is not sinking.
No, yeah, there's marketing to it. They got to change. I mean, Oregon they put themselves on the map doing it.
Right.
Now Nebraska didn't change either.
Yeah.
So they still had that and on their helmet, and so sometimes people are stubborn about change, and then there's another school in Iowa that's pretty stubborn about it, and that's I get it. It's their brand and their MO, and it works for them. I mean, but it's sometimes the environment changes. You got to go with it. And that's in anything. That's in any sport, in any business. You got to go with it. I get the uncomfortableness of it, like the black. Oof, I wanted to beat it. I grew
Right.
up wanting to beat the black. Now we are the color black, and it's changed everything.
Yeah, and to that, I'm all about change when it comes to like the product on the field, the offense, the defense. What you described with how Campbell's built his defense, right? We're going to force people to play. Like that's it. Like I get all that. The change when it comes to name, image, and likeness, all this other stuff. It's just a school of colors. It's like, at what point are we just changing the entire landscape of an academic institution based on what, a handful of 18-year-old kids want?
Yeah. The only reason those kids are there is because of that, right?
Yeah.
The education part is now almost. They're going to school and they're getting an education. Iowa State's grad rate is phenomenal,
Right.
And another thing about Campbell, what he's been able to do, but in the world of NIL, that's another. It's changing everything. It's turning everything upside down in college football.
All right, so I'm done with the black uniforms. That's my one nitpick, and you're the guy to take it out on. If you were coming out today, Ryan Harklau, Humboldt, Iowa, what's your NIL deal?
Oh.
Like, take the collective out of it.
Well,
right?
I can't do Busch Light, I'm sure.
Right. Is
High
there
school kid.
is there like is there some local business in Humboldt or Ames group that you would have gotten tight with to get some type of fun NIL deal if you were playing today?
Man, that's a good question. I don't know that answer. And the funny thing is, what else? The kids don't either. The kids don't even view themselves as NIL. They hear what's out there for money for them. They're 18 years old, man. They were sitting in a math class, 6 weeks ago, and now people are throwing $250,000 at them. Like, oh, what is that? To them, that doesn't mean anything. $250,000. They've never seen $25, let alone $250,000. And so, I don't know if there's a deal that I would be. I don't think any kid is looking for a deal. I think they're looking for money, killer cars, and some jewelry. You know what I mean? And they don't even know why, other than they see it on ESPN. And so that it's a crazy world right now in college sports.
Would you have pursued that, or would you have been like the teetotaler that was like, nope, I'm an amateur athlete. And I'm going to go to school.
I'm taking the money. Like, you're gonna if you get the. I'm not saying I wouldn't have picked Iowa State at the time. I would have gone to Iowa State. I don't think what we're learning is in the transfer portal world, all these kids are going to the money. But guess what? The next year there's going to be more money and more kids coming in. And so if you're the starting quarterback at Auburn and you got paid $250,000 to go there, you need to realize there's $500,000 coming in next year on a kid from California. And then the year after that kid's going to get a $750,000 deal. And so if you look at schools that aren't having a lot of transfers, Iowa State, is back to that locker room. You know what I mean? Do they want the money? Yes, they deserve it, actually. They do bring a lot of money to the universities. I wish the TV deal was part of what they got paid.
Right.
I think that's where the NCAA screwed up. They could have somehow did a bargaining agreement and somehow put some of the TV dollars on top of it, and then this NIL world goes away.
I agree with you there, because I think it's kind of ridiculous that the fans are funding the NIL. Like, all of this legislation, all of this stuff, and, who's paying for the enhancements to the stadiums? Donors, fans. Who's paying for the increased ticket prices every year? Fans. Who's paying for the beer sales in the stadium? Fans. Who's paying for the NIL collectives? Fans. At the same time, TV revenue is going through the roof. We're expanding the playoff. I'm just shocked that there hasn't been some negotiating, to your point, that like some of the media rights money actually goes to the players. If that's the legislation where name, image, likeness, the players are the ones we're watching. And I'm kind of looking out for this expanded playoff here if there's some of that for the playoff teams in the future. Like, if we go to 12 teams here, why should a player, and we just saw it today, Tennessee wide receiver won the Biletnikoff Award, is not playing in the bowl game. Why would that guy, if he was in the playoff now, play in the playoff? He's got no benefit. Now, if that TV money is going to say, hey, just like the playoffs of the NFL or the MLB, there's a playoff pool of money that's going to go to players for NIL that are playing in those games. Otherwise, if you're playing in a quarterfinal playoff game, you get nicked up. Why would you play in the semifinal? You still have 2 more games to the national championship.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
No.
So they got to figure that out. They don't want to. They want the fans to pay for it, but I think that's kind of messed up.
Well, think of this. Like the athletic departments, and Jamie Pollard's done an amazing job. I'm a Jamie Pollard guy. Like, I believe in what he's done at Iowa State. Not everything he's done, but from what he's done to build recently and how he's built the program with money, that's not even arguable.
The coaches he's hired and the facilities he's been able to build are just, I didn't know it was possible.
Right. Now, let's go beyond that. They all just got stress tests during COVID. So all these athletic departments that were getting millions and millions and millions of dollars every single year from TV deals, they go through COVID and the millions and they stop. What happened? The athletic departments couldn't have swim teams. They couldn't have tennis teams. They couldn't have golf teams. So the people that you're asking to make good business decisions right now that are in your head are not good business people. They're athletic directors. They ran out of money in 6 months in COVID. Yeah. And so what you're saying is true, but they're so money hungry and spending hungry. They don't understand business. They don't understand savings. They don't understand collective bargaining because they're not business owners. They have money in, money out, money in, money out. There's no.
It's got to be a break even every year.
It is, and they rip through cash like it's like drunken sailors. And so there's two people that we're here because of the NCAA, unable to lead and to lead their way through this, and athletic directors unable to be responsible with that and think ahead. And I think that we're lucky that we have Jamie's the one that led us through COVID. I think he led the Big 12 through COVID. I think he's going to lead us through the transition of realignment. We're lucky. I think we have one of the good ones, but I'm telling you, when the large majority, they got stress tested too in 2020 and they failed. Mm-hmm. If you in 1 year and 6 months don't have a ticket revenue or TV dollars coming in 1 year and 6 months, and you're needing to start dumping things,
right?
That's not okay, And those are the people you're asking to make good business decisions,
right?
I
mean, especially public universities, right? Because those public universities, they've got to break even. And like we've seen it with the University of Iowa. I think there's like 15 associate athletic directors at the University of Iowa. Yeah. And, if you walk through that athletic department, I dare you to ask one person to explain what all 15 of those people do outside of giving campus tours. They won't be able to give you an answer, and they're all making good money.
Yep.
Right. And so the more money you have, the more money you spend. So to your point, it's a weird model, and it's weird that we got to this place. But I'm glad. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm glad that the players are now able to at least have some benefit in it.
I completely agree with you, and I hate it. You know what I mean? I hate the deal that I played as an amateur, and I think, and I don't want to be old school forever, but I'm glad they're getting a piece of it. TV revenue when I was playing for a school is probably $5 million a year. They're up to like $50 million. The Big Ten's like $80 million. You know what I mean? And that, like, you put exponential growth on top of that, it's a dumb number, and they're doing that on the backs of names, on guys that are out there putting everything on the line. Now, they also give you the environment to go get an education. They pay for the pads. They pay for athletes that don't make it. So there's also an investment and risk for the school, so they should keep some of that. But I agree that there should be some revenue. That's where I believe they could have fixed it if they would have figured the TV deals out with these kids. We aren't talking about it.
Right. The money's so out of control now
that
it's like, geez, I don't know what. I don't have the answer anymore, So when you were coming out, 96, right? May of 96, you graduate. I'm sure that fall is probably when you made your final decision. I'm making an assumption here. Who was the school that was hardest to say no to? No, you grew up an Iowa State fan, probably always wanted to wear the Cardinal and gold, not exactly a football powerhouse, coming out of the Walden era into the McCarney era. Who was there a school that was like, oh man,
Nebraska? Was
it?
Oh yeah. So at the time they're the Alabama, So that's a chance for me to go there. I was offered my junior year in high school there.
Tom Osborne.
Yep. And so
did he come up to Humboldt?
Oh yeah, Tom's been to Humboldt. Yeah. So they recruited me as a tight end. And that's where most colleges, actually Iowa State recruited me as a tight end. Everyone had me at tight end, and
because you were a hooper.
Yeah, good hands, and I could run, and I think that was a big part of it. Coach Mack is the one that transitioned all of us to D-line that came in. He wanted to build a defense, similar to what Campbell's tried to do, build that defense, slow play them, and then eventually you can hang with people by doing that. But no, Nebraska, back to your question, Nebraska is the school that was hardest to say no to, going to their facilities. Seeing, I would have a national championship ring now if I had gone that direction. They won one when I was playing against them, and that was hard. Walking away from that opportunity.
Yeah, did you get your ass kicked by Nebraska when you played them then?
Man, I'll tell you a story. So
because you didn't beat them, right? Like
no,
Seneca, that was the first time in since Marv Seiler, I think, that beat them.
It was.
I think it went from Marv Seiler to Seneca.
Yeah,
10 years probably.
We were there my freshman year, and it is 20 below zero, and we're down by 60 at half, just getting housed.
Yeah.
And we're in the locker room at half, and Coach Matt goes, all right, we got to go back out there. You just want to pack it up and go home? It's like, man, if there's that bus, if that's an option, I'm ready to go home.
Somebody was probably like,
yeah. I was going to raise my hand. I'm ready to be done. We are down 60. It's 20 below zero, and there's zero chance we're coming back. And then my senior year, we were up 21 on them. They were number one team in the nation. We were up 21 in the third quarter. They came back and beat us by 7 or 14. But we closed the gap in 4 years on the number one team in the nation. They had the Heisman Trophy winner, Eric Crouch, on that team, and Amon Green is the guy we played against. And they had the players, their offensive line. They were all Americans across the front. But that's when our D-line got real, and I will still say it's the best D-line that Iowa State's ever had. I think there's some guys that could be sprinkled in, but I don't think across the board there's been a better D-line at Iowa State.
Reggie Hayward, James Reed, Kevin Durand.
Yep.
Durand?
Durande.
Yeah, Durande, and then Ryan Harklau.
Yeah, Jordan Karstens.
Oh,
who
Jordan
played in the
Karstens.
Carolina Panthers, is on that defensive line. I mean, he was
huge.
Dude, he was my backup, but he was way better than I was by the time he got done. He was a kid that turned into a dude, and he was a big walk-on kid from Panora, farm kid, and he turned into a guy. Nigel Tharp's a kid that played for the Detroit Lions. So we had, 6 defensive linemen in the NFL at one time from that defensive line. And so that's pretty legit football.
Breaking your foot twice at Iowa State.
Mm-hmm.
Was the physical part of it harder or the mental part of it harder?
Oh, mental for sure. It actually was the mental part was the best football I've played in my life. My junior year in college, that I played my junior year I was a better football player than my senior year in college. I just wasn't healthy my senior year. I had stingers the whole year. I had neck problems that whole year. I got banged up in camp and never got right. I fought stingers every single week game. My junior year at Iowa, I was a nose guard and had 8 tackles and a sack at halftime. They couldn't, it was a point where they weren't able to block me. You know what I mean? And I think that when I broke my foot in that game and to start the second half, I actually broke it, felt it go numb, got double teamed on the next, I stayed in the game, broke a double team, made the tackle the next play, then went out of the game.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And I think that mentally after that, it really was hard on me because I knew what I was at the level I was playing at, and it was hard to walk away from that, man. It was like you knew when you're at the top of your game, like you would be in basketball, and you're just on fire, and you just things were going right. Mentally, when that shut down, I struggled. Emotionally, it was a hard thing for me.
The Insight.com Bowl. So for Cyclone fans, I think first bowl win since 1978 Peach Bowl.
First bowl win ever.
Or first bowl since
that's
the
the
78 Peach Bowl, and then we won it.
Yes.
We had that punt return. Who's the guy that ran the punt return back?
Oh, yeah.
Billups.
Yeah, Jermaine Billups.
Jermaine Billups. He was
slipped my mind. He's a stud. He's great. By the way, great human being. Came to Iowa State because everyone wanted him to play DB, and so we recruited him as a running back, and then we moved him to DB.
Yeah.
And Jermaine, man, he was a great human being. And, dude, I tell you what, he, as a freshman, made a big-time play to save that game.
When you're in college and you win the Insight.com Bowl, which, it's a bowl game, but how can you party? Like, can you party away from your coaches, or like how'd the party go that night?
That night, honestly, it was a late night game, so we'd have been the 9 o'clock game probably in Iowa time, so 7 or 8 o'clock the game kicked off in Phoenix. By the time you're out of the locker room, it's midnight.
But you're partying.
No, you believe it or not, no. Like we went to the I did go to a bar where a lot of the families were, but you're exhausted. You literally don't want to party. Like you didn't. I remember the night vividly.
But that was your last game ever, right?
That's my last game at Iowa State. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and so I didn't party. Actually, it was kind of a sad moment. We won a game, but I didn't want to be done there. Like it was a surreal night, and nobody went to a party that night.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I would have guessed the opposite. I would have guessed that there's like a wink thing, conference room at the hotel with a boatload of beer that you guys all destroyed.
Nobody wanted it to be over. So it really was, believe it or not, we were excited on the field. We partied, we got in the locker room, we all looked at each other and knew the run was over, that our time there was done and that senior class was done, and it became somber, and it sounds crazy. You're thinking as a Cyclone fan, you win 9 games, you won your first bowl game in school history, you're going to go celebrate it. We were more sad that it was done than that it had happened. It was a very somber night.
Interesting. That's not the route I expected to go. So after that, it's somber. Like, are you crying and hugging guys and telling them you love them and doing
absolutely
that whole thing? Yeah.
I sat with my shoulder pads on for an unhealthy amount of time in that locker room.
Right.
I wasn't ready to take them off. You know what I mean? You give your life to an organization. You win 1 game your freshman year, and then what it took to go to 9 games, to win 9 games was a hell of a journey. But when you had to go take those pads off last time, I'm 45 years old, man. This happened 22 years ago. And I can today still tell you exactly my thought process, my mindset when I was sitting in the stool in the Arizona Diamondbacks locker room, because that's where they played the game. I can tell you what I was thinking when I was doing it and how hard it was to pull those pads off the last time.
What were you thinking?
Don't want to be done. How do I keep this going? I think, believe it or not, at that time, the NFL wasn't in my picture. It wasn't on my mind. It wasn't my thought. It wasn't on anyone's thoughts on that team. It was about the team, and guys went on. I was able to go on and play a little bit, and so were obviously a few other guys, but it wasn't ever talked about. The NFL wasn't talked about by that team by like, hey, I'm going pro, I'm going to the league, No, I was like, man, we're going to win this week. Here's what we got. It was truly a team environment.
What was that NFL like after that? So you end up signing with the Jaguars as a free agent. Like, was there a pro day at Iowa State? You didn't go to the combine. So, like, what did that, meat market process look like for you?
So I went into Atlanta, Georgia as soon as the bowl game's over, and hired an agent, and then worked out with a bunch of athletes down there. And Brian Urlacher's there, Champ Bailey's there, John Smoltz is there, Maddox is there. It's the same guy training all these guys, and then that's where our agent paid for us all to go. Kalani Sitake was one of my roommates who is actually the BYU head football coach now.
Oh, yeah. I knew I recognized that name from somewhere.
Yep. So people in the Big 12 will start recognizing him. But I go there, start training, and then, there's a pro day at Iowa State. You fly back, they time you. And I had actually, I think it was either the fastest or second fastest 3-cone drill in the nation that year. It's a quickness drill, and so that gets you on the map, man. Like, how does this guy from Iowa State running this quick,
Mm-hmm.
And that was my game. I was 290 pounds, but, in high school, I was a 100-meter runner, as a sprinter, you know what I mean? I threw the shot and was a sprinter, and I think that, that was how I was able to get a name for myself, as my athleticism more than anything else.
So what was that training camp in Jacksonville like, or when you're an undrafted free agent, I guess, like, are there a lot of options and the process of selecting to go to Jacksonville, or was that the only spot for you?
No, there's selection. Actually, it wasn't even the highest pay. So when you're a free agent, the next thing you know, the phone starts popping. My phone was popping throughout the day, like, hey, 6th round, we think you're 6th. Oh, never. Hey, we're going to get you in the 7th round. Like, the programs are calling, your agent's calling. Next thing you know, the drafts are. I'm like, I just thought, well, I'm not going. I don't get to play. I never even thought about free agency at this point. And next thing you know, my phone goes off. And, it, for me, I don't remember. Like, San Francisco, I know, was one. New Orleans. Like Miami, I believe, was one of them. But then Jacksonville had the two things. They had a salary cap problem. And they had a D-line room after I researched it that I felt I could get into, where I could beat some guys out. So it was a selection. It wasn't the highest paying one, but it was the one I thought I could make. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I made the decision with my agent. Like, I can make that roster.
And was this like Tony Baselli, Mark
Yep.
Brunell, like Fred Taylor, that Jacksonville?
That Jacksonville, yeah. They just 2 years earlier had won or lost in the AFC Championship game. And so Jimmy Smith was the wide receiver, and Keenan McCardle was the other wide receiver. Like, it was Carnell Lake, Hardy Nickerson.
Carnell Lake was on that team?
Carnell Lake, Hardy
God,
Nickerson.
that guy was probably 40.
Yeah, Tony Brackens. Like, I mean, it was stacked with all pros. You know, they just put a lot of old guys and young guys together, but then they ran into salary cap problems.
And that was Tom Coughlin.
That was Tom Coughlin.
Oh, dude, what's that guy like?
So day 3, I hit Brunel hard in practice. And, you know, I'm trying to make a name for myself, and unfortunately I did for the wrong side of it. And when I hit Brunel, I mean, I got there and hit him hard, and I could not have peeled Coughlin off my shirt. Like, he literally was, if he could have climbed on me, he would have. Like, he was in my face. And then you learn, like, man, you don't hurt a franchise quarterback. You stay away from him. When in practice, you shouldn't get within 10 feet of him. And I just didn't know that. No one ever told me. Like, I was trying to make a football team. I didn't care who number 8 was. I'm going to go get him, you know. And
so at Iowa State, were you guys hitting the quarterback in practice?
No, but I just came off of a rush. I mean, yeah, Sage. If you're not happy with Sage, you give him a little poke. You know, I gave him a shot a few times, but in NFL, they don't want you near their hands.
Right.
They don't want you 5 feet from Brunel, and I didn't get that close. I mean, I hit him, but not too terribly hard. But they don't want you touching them. You know, those guys if they break their thumb or their hand on you when they're throwing a pass. And so that was my first experience with him. But I loved him. I thought he was a great coach. He and I were built for each other. I'm a blue collar, you know, hardworking guy that's all he wanted, someone to show up on time, shut your phone off in meetings, be respectful, and work hard. He was a perfect coach for me in the NFL.
And all the clocks are 5 minutes ahead of time.
Well, on time is late. Yeah, you know, early is on time, and late you don't care. Like you were fined for a phone ringing, so your cell phone rings, it's like $1,000 a ring. And so, man, I tell you what, if it rang twice, it's $2,000. They would literally fine you in a team meeting for a cell phone ringing. I just didn't even bring my phone in the meeting rooms.
Right. Yeah, it was much easier not to bring it in then. Nowadays, everybody's addicted to their phones. And
I'd be broke. I mean, I was a free agent. Like,
right.
I didn't get that much money doing it.
Staph infection?
Yeah, MRSA. Yeah, MRSA got into my leg. I was actually supposed to start on, I think it was either Sunday night or Thursday night football. It was the second preseason game. And I was scheduled to start. They were going to run me, you know, they were, right. I mean, I was going to be the guy,
Here's
you know.
Here's
your chance. And I was getting dressed for the game, and I couldn't get my game pants on. Everything was all swollen up, and I was full of MRSA. And I remember Tony Baselli was sitting next to me. Actually, I was in Bible study group with him, and he was Tony Baselli's a great human being, and he sat next to me as I dug all this infection out of my leg, and they flew me back and checked me into the hospital, and thank God I still have my leg. I mean, at one point, the doctors at the hospital in Jacksonville they literally talked amputation because of how deep that infection was in my leg.
So how long did it take that infection to develop? Like, when did you get infected, and then?
I don't know, because I thought I pulled a hip flexor when I got off the airplane in New York. We were playing the Giants, and so I was like, man, my hip flexor's a little sore. But you know, any athlete's done that every once in a while. I thought by the morning it'd be better, and it was worse when I woke up, and I was frustrated because I was starting a game and a chance to really make a name for myself. And it wasn't my hip flexors. My lymph nodes were so full of infection in my leg that I couldn't bend my hip, and so that tells me that had been in my leg for at least a week and a half, 2 weeks. You know.
Is it? I feel like Jacksonville, or maybe it was Tampa Bay in recent years, had an outbreak down there. Another one.
So I got it through the NFL. Jacksonville, it did have an outbreak after me. I wasn't the only one on the team to get it. Kyle Brady, tight end, got it. I know, and I was a part of an NFL lawsuit.
That's what I was gonna. Yeah, there had to be like a work comp or like some type of deal here.
Yeah, the NFLPA wanted me to sue them, you know, and be part of the lawsuit. I dropped my name out of it. Interesting enough, I thought I was going to go be a sports agent. So you can't be suing the football teams and then represent players. And so I was going to go work for my agent and eventually develop into a sports agent as what I wanted to do. And so I dropped my case against them and moved forward in that path.
So regret that?
So, I mean, it's money.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I mean, I don't. I'm old school. You talk about small town Iowa. I don't believe in that. Like, they didn't do anything on purpose. Right. They didn't try to get me sick. I mean, did it happen in their facilities? Yeah, it happened in their facilities. But there's no one in that facility trying to get you sick. I don't. Could I have sued them? Probably. But is it really their fault? I mean, that's not me. Right. So I don't. I honestly, even if I didn't, I don't think I sue them. what am I for? What I got sick in your locker room, so
Yeah.
it's just I don't know. I'm just not my style.
Well, because you've seen those cases since then have gotten ugly.
Oh yeah,
Like a couple. I remember a kicker. I can't remember which kicker it was. Giants or Bucks or somebody had that, and it seemed like it went on forever, and nobody looked good doing it.
No,
and it's like, and obviously that guy's career's over, and he's just burned a bunch of bridges for any relationships he had are gone.
Yeah, yeah, they're not trying to get people sick in their own locker room. Something happened, an error happened somewhere, got dirty. Someone gets staph infection, MRSA, then MRSA spreads. Then, those lawsuits aren't, even if you get paid, how dirty am I going to feel? What am I suing you for? You didn't do anything wrong.
And the lawyer's going to take most of it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the problem with some of the world today, right?
So today, you're working for Farm Bureau, running a team out of the state of Iowa. What's tougher, sacking a quarterback or teaching a former gym teacher how to sell disability insurance?
That's a great question. I think that inspiring people is the most important thing in both situations. You can't sack a quarterback unless you're inspired, because there's a 380-pound guy in front of you that's going to tell you can't do it. And it's truly inspiration. You watch Will McDonald play, he's inspired, and the guys everyone is talented at that level in football. What the difference is, talent's never enough at that point. People say talent doesn't matter. Well, it does. You don't get in the locker room without talent. But once you get to that point where everyone's equal, then it's an inspiration thing. And, you look at an insurance financial services industry that I happen to be in, that I chose the path, and it's no different. I can go to a meeting and I see a state full of agents all over the place, but it's who's inspired. And I think that inspiration takes someone from whatever the talent level is to execute at a higher level over the person sitting next to them.
What I always think is funny is, every sales organization that's out there, they want ex-college athletes, right? It's because competitive, self-starters, you go down the list. A lot of times there's a lot of overlap. And everybody thinks that you're a college athlete, you're competitive, you can do sales. It's but once you get out of playing sports, the business world is not that. It is hard, it is rugged, it is unforgiving. There's very little, there's very little fanfare. There's nobody cheering for you, and it's not as alike as a lot of people think that it is, and most people don't work out because it's a different mechanism to get yourself inspired to sell rather than play sports and have the glory, go for the championship. It's just a different world. Now, sometimes it works, but oftentimes it doesn't.
Right. And it's I'm lucky for the 90% of the people that aren't able to get there, because it gives me a path.
Right.
And I think that, if you have that inspiration and you find it, and that's where the athletes come in, is, back to the story. I'm at the bowl game and I get pancaked by Bruns in practice. I mean, and this is not a story. This is true. He pancakes the heck out of me, and he's in my face, and I'm on my back, and I'm not talking pancaked. I mean, smashed to my back. And the next play, and we're at the pool, and Bruns is bragging, hey, I pancaked Harklau today at practice, and Mac's listening, and he hears him, and he goes, hey, Bruns, what happened the next play? And what happened the next play is I had him on his back with Ennis Haywood in my hand on top of him. So I had him and Ennis Haywood. I'm laying on top of both of them. And that's no different than business, is how do you respond when adversity, and it's not even adversity, when you get punched in the nose. If you're not on your back at some point in life, whether it's in business or in something, then you're not playing the game.
Right.
And I think that when you, as an athlete, where I was lucky to learn from, is when you get knocked to your back, how do you respond from it? And it's not just a figure of speech. It's it's going to happen in the business world, man. I was a terrible insurance agent my first 6 months. I was on my back from the start of my career, and probably 18 months later, I was one of the top agents in a company when I started with them. And it's all back to that sports career. I responded to being on my back.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too, at least in my experience, is it's being on your back, but it's the guys and the girls that have the inner self-confidence that after they've been told no for 6 months in a row, that without some coach having a pep talk to them, without some other outside influence, they're still able to get up the next day, go run the plan, and turn it around themselves. Because so often in sports, you've got you've got a cheering section that happens for you. You've got dad saying how great you are. You've got mom saying how great you are. That doesn't exist in the real world. And it takes those real self-starters, that people that like have that inherent self-confidence to believe that they can make the difference.
Right. It's back to that confidence and inspiration, but most of the people, and exactly when you've been at your best, when you're inspired, I don't know what inspires you, but for me, it's my family and kids. Like I want to be great for them, so someday that's why I go to work. You know what I mean? And look, I can wear a pair of sweatpants and cut up jeans, and it's not about the success part of things. It's about, like, I want to show my kids, I want to show my wife that, and that's what inspires me. Will McDonald getting to the quarterback is inspired because he wants to go support his family. And but he knows the NFL is the means. The NFL is not as inspiration as family is. The NFL doesn't get you out of bed, your family does. And, I think that anytime you're struggling in anything, if you can find that inspiration why you're doing it, not like a paycheck's not an inspiration, that like they come and go, but your family is an inspiration. Your kids are an inspiration. Your mom and dad are an inspiration. And, like if you ever noticed in the NFL that all these guys that are playing on Sundays usually have had some kind of history. They are inspired to be great because they had to be. Their backs were against the wall. They were pancaked, and they had Anthony Johnson was homeless. You know what I mean? As an athlete, he's no different than any other kid in that locker room. I'm telling you right now, Anthony Johnson's, as an athlete, is not superior to anybody else in that locker room. But he's inspired for a reason, and I think that that's no different than the business world as well.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what we're about here on the Moonlight Graham Show, right? Those underdogs that are gonna fight harder, longer.
Like you in the state playoffs, man, in basketball.
We lost in the state championship, Ryan.
But you got there.
We got there, but I don't want to talk about it. All right. Ryan Harklau, thanks for coming on the pod, man. It's good to meet you. It's good to meet you. I don't know if we've ever actually met in person, so this has been fun.
No, it's awesome. Like I told you, I cheered for you in high school. I didn't even know you, man. In your North Central Conference, you guys are making a run at the barn, and Coach K is one of my favorite people.
He's the best.
And so I've always cheered for him, and watching you guys make your run, like I said, it's cool to meet you, but I cheered for you one time in your life. You didn't know who each other were. So
North Central Conference, we got to stick together.
That's what we got to.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely.
So at the beginning of the episode in the conversation with Ryan, I asked Ryan where he ranks as far as all-time great Humboldt athletes go. And so we mentioned guys like Bruce Reimers, who played in a Super Bowl. We mentioned Ryan Harklau, I think, is in that conversation. We mentioned Frank Gotch was another guy. And so if that name Frank Gotch doesn't resonate with you, look him up. So Frank Gotch, I'm actually on his Wikipedia page right now. He actually just died December 17th of 1917. So he died almost 105 years ago this week. But from 1908 to 1913, Frank Gotch was the world heavyweight wrestling champion. And so I don't know what professional wrestling was like in the early 20th century. I don't think it was, like the WWE style that it is today. I think it was almost like real wrestling where they actually competed. They were not fixed matches. So I think that's why I'm giving Frank Gotch some credit for being a great athlete, because I don't think it was as much entertainment as it was actually wrestling. So I think Frank Gotch has got to be on that list. But then it makes me wonder, like, Frank Gotch, he died at the age of 40. Crazy. Like, even back then, so many professional wrestlers were dying young, just like they do today. And I just wonder, like, he was 5'11", 210 pounds. You look at him, he was a pretty jacked and built guy, especially for the early 20th century. And I wonder how he would compare to wrestlers today. But that's who Frank Gotch was. If you were wondering, like, who in the heck is the all-time greatest athlete, better than a Bruce Reimers, better than a Ryan Harklau. So check out Frank Gotch if you've got some time this weekend. And maybe the other question is, who's the best athlete ever from your town? If you've got somebody out there, tweet at us, send us a note. We'll talk about them here on the pod. Have a great week, guys. Special thanks to the Moonlight Graham Show team, my brothers Andy and Neil, Tommy Griffin, Brian Sandvig, Brendan Gargano. Merry Christmas to everybody. Spend some time with your family. Go to church. Do all those things that you need to do this Christmas season. But have a wonderful week and drive safe.
It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. It's a pretty good program, broadcasting to the heartland. Sports stories for the everyman. It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. Please follow us on Instagram. You're loving us on Twitter too. You download every pod we do. It's Moonlight Graham.